Copyright University of Auckland, all rights reserved. The content and delivery of lectures in this course are protected by copyright. Material belonging to others may have been used in these lectures and copied by and solely for the educational purposes of the university under license. You may record the lectures for the purposes of private study or research, but you may not sell, alter, or further reproduce or distribute any part of these lectures to any other person. Failure to comply with the terms of this warning may expose you to legal action for copyright infringement by the copyright owner and/or disciplinary action by the university.
Fifth lecture of Communique 2015. Thank you for coming tonight. We are aware that there are a series of things happening in Auckland, so thank you very much for being here. And so tonight we have a speaker, special for me because we are friends. Well, we have been friends for a long time. Severin Soder, associate at Architectus, and he's of course quite well known, and Architectus is also well known. But I'm sure also you will introduce the practice at a certain point of your presentation. But there is no need apparently because we have a representative of the office here, which is good. We are happy. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that very often in large practice, those people who are really the core of the practice are often not on the front line. So they see the work, they organize, but we don't know them. All of that. And also for you, meaning. So I think that is good for me to have you here and to introduce you and also your background. So Severin has been with Architectus since 2005, or at least is on your web. 10 years. Yeah, 10 years, long time. So after his graduation from the University of Innsbruck in Austria, he completed a postgraduate master degree at the Ballet School of Architecture in London under the direction of Peter Cook. He spent 8 years in a number of important architectural firms in Paris, in London, at SOM, and later also Future System. And then back in Austria, he also worked for Baumschlager Eberle. So Severin enjoys working across a variety of projects, types and scale, from house to the city, and has a particular interest in infrastructure as well as multi-unit residential and office buildings. For the lecture tonight, Severin has selected some projects from the archives of Architectus, all of which share the common trait of being unrealized and only exist as drawings or digital and physical models. Every one of these projects has been developed in response to specific client, context, and budget. So it's pragmatic in the sense of being realistic. However, they have all remained immaterial. They are imaged only, as the title of the presentation suggests. So please join me in welcoming Severin Soder.
Thank you, Paula. Welcome, thanks for coming. Yeah, Can you hear me? Okay, bridging the Utopian and the Pragmatic. When Paula gave me the topic for this year's lecture series, I thought, well, that's kind of what I have done in the not too distant past, crisscrossing Utopia and the Pragmatic. And I thought as an introduction, I'll just tell you a little bit about this journey. That's a picture taken at the EA in the members' room at the exhibition opening, Youngkopetsky Drawings. That was just a couple of months ago. And Youngkopetsky founded Future Systems in 1979 together with David Nixon. And the exhibition accompanied the launch of a new book by Richard Rogers and Ivan Margolius called Youngkopetsky Drawings that celebrates Jan's visionary draftsmanship and his drawings. Jan built through his drawings. He didn't build much, but and what he built was maybe equally important as the drawings, but once the drawings were done and the model was done, he was happy. As long as the drawings were good and the model was good, that sort of was enough. And his two trademark drawings were these incredibly detailed cutaway sections and montages that he did. This is a unfoldable platform structure that he developed for NASA. He actually ended up getting a patent as well. So that's Jan. Jan, unfortunately, tragically passed away in 2009. And this orange door behind him was the door to the future for me from 2000 to 2004. And that's Amanda, who joined Future Systems in 89. They were the two partners. And I always wanted to work there, ever since I picked this book up at a trip to London in 93 by Martin Pauly. The title tells it all, The Story of Tomorrow. And it's probably my favorite page in the book. Green building with one of those cutaway sections, the little plasticine model with the broken pencils explaining the structure, the little sketch, and that model was built by as all the other models at Future Systems, by Ken Shuttleworth's brother. He had a model shop, Unit 22, and Jan did the drawings, and then he would get Donnan, who would do the model for him. And when I arrived there, unfortunately too late to get involved in the Lord's Media Centre, the cricket ground in London, but just in time to work on one of the packages for Selfridge's department store in Birmingham, part of the Bullring development. And I thought I had seen the future, excited as you are at a sort of a young age, and this is a pin from the 1940s Futurama exhibition by General Electrics, and Norman Geddes did the exhibition design, and visitors were given this pin once they'd been through it. They had seen the future. But then I moved on from London to Bregenz, back to Austria, where I'm originally from, and worked for these two guys, Carlo Baumschlager and Diep Maevele. And these two, they see the world a bit different. They're a bit more pragmatic, but nevertheless, they gave me a job after going through the Future Systems portfolio. And Diep Maevele on the right there, when he was recently interviewed for a website called What is Architecture? And when he was asked the question, he answered like this: architecture is to find the most specific material solution with the most general value. And what he means by this, that the most specific, that refers to climate, history, the site, the culture, the construction technique. The general value that relates to a flexible building that can fulfill a multitude of uses over its lifetime. And also what they call a socio-aesthetic approach to sustainability, meaning that a building is accepted or even better loved by the users and the passers-by. So in society, because if a building is liked, people look after it and it lasts for a long time, which is way more sustainable than having a few photovoltaic panels on the roof. And the philosophy of the office there is to design from the outside in, so the facade is always developed first. And they're less interested about the internal subdivision, because, as I said, buildings have to be flexible, so the layout is going to change anyway. So the focus is on the exterior, and also the facade is the climatic interface with the environment. As you might have seen, a testament to that philosophy is this building, 2226, their own office building as well, which keeps the climate inside, the temperature between 22 and 26 without air conditioning systems or the like. And then came the big move from Austria to New Zealand. I did arrive at Architectus back then, still in Center Street. And in Architectus, it's we operate between order and opportunity, as Hague back in Czech Cooper diagnosed in the book. And I assume everyone's got a copy, everyone's read it, so we don't have to talk too much about it. But just briefly, the order refers to the analytical and the rational, and the opportunities, the aspirational and the intuitive. So, there's a bit of both, a healthy balance. And now I've got a series of unrealized projects that I got off the archive, and you wouldn't want to give such a talk in dire economic times, but luckily we've all got enough to do, so we can afford and go through projects that remain prototypes and didn't get built. So first one, let's start on the waterfront. It's not about the extension of the port. It's Queen's Wharf, that controversial competition that we entered together with our friends at Chesmax a few years ago. So the brief was for a major public space on Queen's Wharf and a cruise ship terminal that could also be a multifunctional building. And the diagram shows the park on the western side and a piece of infrastructure that can work as a cruise ship terminal but can also fulfill other functions, and is a building that you can walk on, incorporates a promenade. So that's the plan. And in section you can see the park, the open space to the west, and the terminal with its roof raising up to the cruise ship and welcoming it on the right-hand side. And also elevating people above the wharf and giving them different ways to experience the harbour. And a few pictures of that, wandering down Queen Street with the ferry terminal to the left, and the big ramp that elevates the people to a higher level. Walking out to the end of the wharf, Rangitoto in the distance, and Devonport. The very end, the tip of the wharf was sort of left open-ended for future projects to happen. There were steps proposed where you could go down and get close to the water and engage with it in a different way. This is up on the promenade level where you elevate it and you get different views. Inside the terminal, under that Pacific roof, we saw it as a longhouse to give it that identity, and that could be used for other purposes as well. See it here from Quay Street, rising up, welcoming or farewelling the cruise ship passengers. There's another view looking across from Princess Wharf. And that's where it all ended. Some of you might remember the picture from the Herald that got political, and that was the end of it. Moving further west, but remaining on the waterfront, the hotel. And the waterfront hotel was another competition. And unfortunately, the winner didn't get to build it either. So if that's any consolation, the site was the site where Team New Zealand are located by Karanga Plaza. And the idea was the notion of a courtyard by the water. We were inspired by the slipways and the boatyards that sort of enclose a space and welcome arrivals from the water. And we also tried to maximize the views to the harbor for all the rooms, because we thought if you were to stay on the waterfront, you know, you'd like a room where you can actually see the harbor. That's looking from the courtyard to the east. And we had this sky bar going across where you could, from the second row, you could look underneath and still, being further back on Halsey Street, see out to the harbor. And we structured the building, we layered it. The bottom layer, the ground floor, is sort of heavy out of rock. Then we've got a layer of timber shutters to the roofs, some planting, and then another layer at the top, the sky bar that relates to the sky, that is sort of more immaterial and clad in glass. And this is along Halsey Street, where you don't actually see into the rooms, but you can sort of see that all the views of the rooms go into the long direction and look either out or back to the water. And there's a shot of the lobby mediating between the courtyard and the sky. And then again on the waterfront, further west again, out in Hobsonville, where the Upper Harbour Highway crosses the harbour. The old Effortset. And this is what it looked like at the time with the Sutherland hangar and the seaplane hangar. And that's what we imagined could happen down at the landing. The wharf got built sort of roughly like we imagined it, but a lot of the other stuff didn't. We imagined new uses for the various hangars and complemented it by sympathetic buildings, sort of in a shed-like form, relating to that industrial language. And also, just to remember everyone, there was a different master plan as well that accompanied all this at the time, that saw a long linear green spine organizing the large residential development that's undergoing up there at the moment. Now, from secular clients to a bit of God work, Holy Trinity Cathedral in Parnell, the competition for the completion project of the cathedral. Then we sort of had a competition within the competition in the office, explored a number of options, but they all had the same idea. The idea was to have a courtyard, a cloister behind the altar, and have an ambulatory around, so we could have a loop. You go out through the ambulatory into the chapel and then come back in. We just explored how we would express that, and that's what won the internal competition in the office. And this picked up on Professor Toy's vision of the cathedral cluster and the roof shapes. So you see it here, looking into that courtyard. And it's a view from the ambulatory into the courtyard. The courtyard had a pond in it, and the courtyard could connect to the chapel, so that those two could become one. The ground floor was surrounded by a screen, and the light would mainly come in from the upper skylights. You see here. And this is looking from the memorial garden up to the rose window of the cathedral. So our roof shape preserved that view, that butterfly shape that came down in the middle, so that one could still see the rose window. It's not only the Anglican Church that didn't like us, the Catholics shunned us as well recently. In the new territories of Flatbush, where the brief was for a church, a community centre, and the parish offices together with the priest's residence, so 3 elements, and they will be implemented in stages. And this is a section through the Revit model. We didn't cut in half a Balsavoog model, but that explores how will we express the form, how will we generate that image of a church. And we've got this inverted seating that comes down just above the altar. You see here, and since it's a Catholic church, it's also allowed to be a bit richer and more colorful on the inside. And if anyone wonders what the priest is carrying there, it's a monstrance which is used on Feast of Corpus Christi. And this is what stage 1 would look like from the outside with a freestanding bell tower. You'd enter through the courtyard into the basket that contained the congregation. Victoria Quarter, not a spiritual client, but nonetheless charismatic. I don't know if anyone remembers Rhubarb Lane. Lower West Side. It was a master plan for substantial mixed-use development, and I'm going to look at building 2, where the red dot is, which we called Tetris, if anyone remembers that. So we were interested in a 3-dimensional exercise of arranging apartments, stacking units in a way that would make for interesting apartments that were with a different sort of volume from what you usually get. And we had, as in Tetris, you have different 3-dimensional objects. In this case, the apartments, like they happened on 2 levels, and they were connected like this one, like in a T-shape, this one here, or an L-shaped one, and where they would overlap, there would be a double height space. And then we had a structural framework and a service strategy, those 4 yellow risers. And then we would fill it up. You drop those units in like you do in Tetris in that framework and put a skin around and the details, and there's your building. And some of the views of what those apartments might have looked like inside. I spare you all the bathroom renders that we did. So there's quite a few of those as well. Civic buildings. Auckland High Court. Extension to the High Court building. And there was quite a complex planning regime, controls around that, and an envelope that constrains what you can do. And we came up with this roofscape that provided all the accommodation that was needed, preserved the public open space, and respected the heritage court building. But it was powerful enough to become it could have become a real city landmark with a new unifying roof over the building that has a strong expression. And the way it was organized, lawyers in the basement, courts, and the judges on top, under the roof shape. Grace Avenue, what could have become a civic building, there was a chance. It's on Mayoral Drive, looking to the town hall across ART Square. Made up of 2 parts. One part on Mayoral Drive, a more rectilinear volume, and a soft, more organic one in the park. And the one on the front contained a big atrium that focused all the views and looked back to the town hall. That's what you see here. The entrance, open, inviting, and now being inside that atrium that allows views out of the building deep back from the floor plate out to ART Square. Couple of towers, Albert Street, something else getting built there after many attempts at the moment on the corner of Albert and Swanson. This was a mixed-use building, combination of office on the lower levels and apartments on top, with a side core against the existing buildings. This is the city side, the slick hard side that addresses Albert Street, and there was a more modulated side on the park side onto St. Patrick's Square. And so obviously St. Patrick's Cathedral, Catholic on the square, and those colored fins to the offices that modulate the western sun. The colors, they relate to the vestment colors in the Catholic Church, the rich purples, the gold, the green. Another one, probably not that tall, on 4th Street, next to the old roller mills building. And this building was a lot about context. The adjacent heritage building, the sunlight control to Emily Reserve, and that's on the back. We came up with a tripartite elevation, a base, a middle, and a top, but we interlocked those, so the stone wraps around the glass. And we had a side core, an L-shaped office floor plate, and we pushed the building against its neighbor and created a laneway and a courtyard on the side of the Roller Mills building. That's it, Bernard. Another one brings us to Wellington now, we're leaving Auckland, Featherston Street, a triangular site, and maybe in a similar way we were interested again in stacking and arranging floor plates, and we turned this into a volumetric exercise. And when you stack blocks on a triangular site, you end up with gaps. But these were not leftover spaces. We turned those into winter gardens, which were dancing around the building as the stacking goes up. And those winter gardens will be breakout spaces for the workers. And look out over the harbour. So we're there right on Traverse Quay. The green areas are the winter gardens, and where the blocks, we didn't cut the rectangular blocks where at the corners of the triangle, we just let them cantilever and shoot past. Now staying in Wellington, not far from there, Rutherford House, Victoria University PBT campus next to the railway station and the law school, an existing tower and a podium, prominent lecture theatre there right in the front, and they are renting area under the railway station, but they had to move out, so they were looking for more space, and that's what you see in the diagram here. And we came up with this idea of the skirt and the shadow. We looked into maximizing the podium and physically building a shadow to the tower, otherwise leaving the tower itself untouched. And it was very constrained because there's a view shaft from the steps of Parliament going down to the harbour that goes right in front of the tower building, so you couldn't come out at the front where there was room above the podium. So we worked the skirt, the podium really, really hard, and extended it and created verandas over the footpath and bay windows, and arranged the program in a way that it related to its context. And the black part is the shadow of the tower where we needed some more height, and that's a view along Lambton Quay where that skirt just comes out over the footpath and makes a veranda and provides shelter. That's the model of it. So the red part is the extended is the extended skirt, and the black is the tower's shadow. A bit further up the road again, between PBT Street and Little Pipi Street, PBT Street, proposal for the Indian Embassy, and we called this designing diplomacy. It was all about the zoning, the front lawn, for the ceremonial lawn, the chancery itself, and then a building that would be the background that would contain the consular and his residences and staff. So that's how we arranged it in these zones. And we related it to those colors and the Indian stone, and we put a veil around the embassy that makes a shape that reminded us on the mountain ranges, the Himalayas that you can see from India, because you start looking over the grass plains and you see that mountain range in the background. New Zealand School of Music, right in the heart of Wellington. A site with great potential. You can see the Michael Fowler Centre, the town hall, the library, the art gallery, the City to Sea Bridge, crossing across Jervois Quay. And this is the diagram. So we had a plinth, and we introduced two intersecting atrias. One, the orange one, connects from the square and lets you see through to the harbour, and the blue one was aligned with the waterfront axis that takes you inside the building. Then the program required 3 big performance spaces, those yellow volumes that we arranged and connected with ramps. And then a series of smaller teaching spaces and practice rooms that we put on the outside, because those big performance spaces, they don't have any windows, you don't see into them, they're basically just black boxes. But these smaller rooms, they provide a smaller grain, and they can activate and interact with the streets around. So this is everything together now, all these elements. And that's what it could have looked like from the square. That's looking through that first orange atrium, getting a view out to the harbour. That's a view, there's that lane. The library will be behind me, animated by a series of small practicing rooms, and they all have angle and asymmetric shapes, because that's what's required acoustically, so that worked really well in terms of providing interest there. And that Anne-Sophie Mutter made an appearance in the foyer of the recital hall, looking out over the harbour. Now, as that say, the weather forecast to the regions. Nelson Marlborough Institute of Technology. The site was here. The brief was for a new arts and media building on the campus. That was one part of the brief. The other part was for a timber demonstration project, because there was sponsorship was available from the industry, Nelson Pine. And this was our proposal, which is best explained in section. A taller building, defining the street edge, with artist studios and south-facing sheet roofs on the top level. The low part out the back contained the more industrial workshops, jewelry, metalwork, and the two were linked by a suspended timber grid shell. So there was a lot of innovative ideas in terms of building with LVL and glulam in there. That's how one of those rooftop artist studios might have looked like. But in terms of demonstrating the technology and the timber structure that obviously would be clad, how would we do it? We had this idea of an X-ray. How can you see through the building? How can you see through the cladding back to the bones? Or illustrate this, what's under the body. And we had this idea that because the building was very much a sectional building, so we actually built the section, and we have a facade that reveals the makeup. So we had a corrugated polycarbonate cladding, and through that you would see the insulation, and embedded you would see the timber structure, and that could have looked like that. All the jury had to say to that is, how long is that going to last? Christchurch, after the earthquakes, a very prominent site right by the Avon, where Cashel Mall crosses the bridge. And the idea was for a mosaic. Because what we tried to do is, because obviously the city still exists in everyone's memory, and that's very much needed. So we thought we create this really vibrant and multi-layered environment made out of a series of smaller buildings, of different buildings, and have a series of laneways crossing the site and bringing life into the site. It's the footprint of the various buildings. That's what it looked like in the model. And they all were given the different roof shapes to pick up on that grain and give them a different identity, so you could relate to them. It's a view from inside those laneways. And then that's the corner view. And what you see there on the west is these are large winter gardens, harvesting the western sun and looking out to Hague Park across the Avon, and bringing the greenery, that green arterial that the river is bringing that inside, and creating a stimulating and healthy environment. And the last project is the largest competition that we've entered so far, the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The Criminal Court currently still resides in interim premises within the city, but there was a new site on the outskirts, just where the city ends and the dunes begin on the Atlantic coast. And those four squares, they represent the four courts that were required, and that's what anchors the building in that landscape. That's what you see in the model here, those four timber volumes. And the rest was arranged around the prosecutor's office, judiciary, and on the other side, the registry. You can see the heavy volumes of the courts sunken into the sand, and everything else is attached, and then the roof and the cladding wraps it. In The Hague, the city means the hedge. So there was this idea because there's a lot of requirements in terms of privacy and security, and obviously you have to modulate the light and all the other things to build a hedge in front of the building, and bring these different parts together under one unifying element. And the building is best explained in section again. On the left-hand side, you can see the street address, the arrival. On the right-hand side, you see the dunescape. The building opens to that and allows views and creates tries to create a very human environment as much as possible in such a facility. So, ever tried? Ever failed? No matter, try again, fail better. Thank you.
Thank you for the really kind of trip in time and space, and I think that it's kind of fascinating thinking that our cities could have been different somehow. We need a little bit of imagination. But because we have a little bit of time, I think that, well, I don't know if you want to ask something. That would be very interesting. But otherwise also the other, if you have any question about this project and how maybe something more, some more details, something about also the, the way you are presenting the project, because I mean we have seen different sort of style, but somehow of course your touch everywhere.
Yeah, how much of the time that you spent on these projects, probably differs between them, was extracurricular, if you like, and how much was on office time, and how do you think that influenced the outcomes of the projects?
I don't think we differentiate, you know. You just put in the love, you know, that you're willing to give to make it a good project. Obviously, you know, competitions, they always require, you know, a big effort. It's 9 to 5 never does the job, but you know, you pick something that you want to do and then you do it.
Which of the ones that you've shown that we didn't hurt the most?
We were just talking about this before when we walked up and said, well, why are we doing this? This is like looking at ex-girlfriend's Facebook account, you know, why are you doing this to yourself? But I don't know. I don't know really. They're all dear babies, you know, for different reasons. Wouldn't pick one for the other.
Do you use any metrics for calculating the sustainability, the energy efficiency of the buildings, and how long payback is for the embodied energy of a building? Like amorphous silicon, for instance, PVs, it's 3 years before you actually save the cost of the actual panel, whereas these new technologies out that will actually be about 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I can't say we do that, but we as the design team that includes consultants, we do that. We look at things like that and we investigate it and we take the advice. But ourselves, obviously, we don't have the capability to do that. But we're always keen to push the boundaries.
But it's in your background. It's always in the back of your mind. You're mindful of that.
Yeah, but as I said in the very beginning, you know, what's more important, and especially at this early stage, where all these projects were, you know, they didn't go any further. You make the key decisions in terms of orientation, you know, or building envelope, the relationship of facade to volume, you know, all these critical things. Or do you refurbish or do you rebuild? That's way more important than sort of what type of PV panel goes on the roof later on. You know, these are the fundamentals, these decisions that you make at the very, very outset.
Sorry, suppose perseverance. What would you take away from each of these projects, or would, given the time again, would you have done the same project, the same design?
Well, obviously, in hindsight, we sometimes, you know, you find out a bit more what a particular jury or client was looking for, you know. But if you had the same amount of knowledge that you had at the outset, we probably, maybe we do it the same again, or or you wake up with a different idea and then you do it different. But I mean, we still stand behind all those. Otherwise, we wouldn't be showing those. If we thought they're no good.
Actually, I wanted to ask because you showed projects which were not built, but of course many other were. And so back to the title of the series. What do you think that would have changed in the project that we have seen? I mean, the other actually, I suppose, were changed in a way because there are compromises, there are budget, there is a series of other things.
I mean,
so how much they changed from the beginning to the
they're allowed to change, but only for the better. Otherwise, you still want them. You want to look at the initial idea, and but in terms of how much they're allowed to change, it's not so important. Or still, it is important, but it's not the primary importance of what they look like. But you start with a diagram, and you always come back to that diagram, and you still want that diagram to be intact at the end of the project, because the diagram tells you what the idea was and what is important and what not. So if changes come along during the design development process, you sort of ask yourself, well, so what are we trying to do here? What was our idea? Does this support the idea? Does it work with the idea, or does it destroy the idea? Yeah.
Is there any project that you have actually realized or built that you can, you remember was actually quite different from the beginning?
Telecom.
This is a secret,
Telecom, for example, it's not secret. Telecom, for example, changed a lot. Telecom was initially developed as 4 individual office buildings with high quality public space links going through, and then they had a facade on all 4 sides, and there they were different proportions, different heights. There were a little group of buildings, and then the client had the chance to start talking to the tenant, Telecom, and they said, well, we like the site and everything else, but we're a big organization, we need all those buildings, and we want our people to work in one building. And then the idea was to bring those buildings together, and what was public space in between them became an atrium, which still remains public. Everyone can walk through there, and then the bridges that link the buildings, they cross in the atrium. So in principle, the idea is still there. It just looks a bit different and works a bit different.
Because we always have this idea that at the beginning, when you do the competition, everything is there, it's your best, and then you have to start cutting. But maybe it's not always like that.
Well, if you overlook something, or you haven't known something, sometimes you just have to start again.
Good. Do we have any other question? No, apparently you are going through a lot of different projects. Okay, so I think that for the first time we are on time. Thank you. Very Austrian.
I'm surprised. 180 slides in 45 minutes.
Yeah,
not
well,
bad.
I wouldn't believe it. Yeah, maybe it was too fast. The people were not able to even.
Yeah, I
take
can't
note.
leave them up too long, otherwise people should start sketching and taking pictures.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Secret, still secret.
That's
So are you reusing the project for the future?
Yeah, they're prototypes,
That's why.
Yeah.
So thank you very much again for coming tonight, and thank you for coming to all of you. I just want to remind you that next week we have quite another interesting lecture, and it is to remember Ian Hatfield. So if you want to come, I think it will be very, very important for all us to be here to remember one of the best museum architects. Thank you for coming tonight. And
Yeah,
I
thanks
hope
for
to-
coming, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.